Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, well, that didn't work quite like I thought it was going to. Have you ever looked at something online and you purchased it, and then when you got it and tried to use it because you had it for a specific purpose, it didn't really work out like you thought? And you kind of thought, well, that's money wasted. Well, that's kind of what we're looking at today. So let's head over to the bench and I'll show you what I'm talking about, and then we're going to attempt to fix it. Well, it gets dry in the shop and you get thirsty in the shop. So I have a water bottle, and my wife has water bottles just like this, identical. And this is not where the problem lies. Where the problem lies is that every once in a while these water bottles need to be cleaned out or washed. So my wife online purchased this brush and she's quite happy with it. She loves the way it works. She loves the way it cleans the bottles. However, it didn't work out like she thought it was going to, because if we look at this and you get that brush down into the bottom to clean out the bottom corners, you are left with fingertips here to hold it to try to clean out the bottom. So where the problem lies is in the fact that this handle is way too short for the purpose that she wanted it for. And no fault of her own. Sometimes online, even though you measure it and oh yeah, the bottle is, I don't know, 10 inches long, the brush is 12 inches long, that should work great. It may not work for a proper application once you actually try it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the handle. So if we look at my water bottle here and we line up the base of our brush with the bottom of our water bottle, it looks to me like this thing could use, I'm going to say, like another 4.5 inches of brush handle there to make it usable. And right now it's a 4.5 inch long handle. So what we need, I think, is a 9-inch handle. So the first thing I kind of have to wonder is, how can we get this handle off? It looks like bamboo to me, and laminated bamboo at that. So I don't know, laminated bamboo sounds like we should be able to just split it. All right, so we've got our handle clamped down onto a scrap piece of wood, and we're just going to use a chisel here beyond the hanging hole and see if we can't split this. Okay, that worked out pretty well. However, it didn't separate it from the brush, so we'll just split it again, maybe closer to the brush end this time. And there we go. Okay, so it's kind of mounted in there the way I thought it would be, just twisted wire, and they've obviously just glued it or laminated these pieces together around it. But what we need now, we can put this aside, and we now need a blank to replace the handle that we just destroyed. Well, I've cut a blank out of a scrap of walnut here. It is 9 inches long. It's about 1.25 inches. I don't want to say square because it's the furthest thing from it. But what I've done is I've marked as close as I can the center at both ends, and I've measured the size of this metal part here that needs to be inserted into our handle. And in order to get it to fit properly, I'm going to need a 3/16 diameter hole. So using a stop color so that I can get the proper sized hole in relation to what I need from the handle, I'm going to very carefully drill a 3/16 diameter hole right in through the end of this walnut blank, pretty much right in the center. And with that done, we're just going to test and make sure that our brush is going to fit in our handle. It's a little loose, but that's okay. The epoxy is going to glue that in afterwards. So at this point now, we can take this over to the lathe and mount it up between centers. So with our blank mounted between centers, the very first thing that we want to do is we're going to turn this thing to round. Now, a lot of people, when they're turning to round, they like to take off these corners first. And sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. It depends on the project. In this case here, I'm not going to bother, and I'm just going to spin this thing round. Now the original handle up at the brush end, and that's this end right here at the tailstock, was 15/16 of an inch in diameter. So I want to keep it proportionate to the brush. So that's what we're going to do first. We're going to turn, I'm going to say about the last inch of this down to 15/16 diameter. Now we don't want to get too fancy with this entire thing. So I'm going to turn this down a little more. It's still not perfectly round. We've got a flat spot right here. So we're going to turn it down just a little more. And then once we get it close to the diameter that we want, I want to round off this back end of our handle. Now hopefully the camera is showing it here. Where we've got our end here at 15/16 roughly, I have started to scoop out the middle here to make the handle part a little skinnier while leaving this bulbous part here at the end. And I'm going to carry on with that trend and take this down just a little bit more. I'm not sure of the diameter. I'm kind of going by feel here. I'm thinking 3/4. But that may not be happening. Let me just see here. I'll test it. You know what? 3/4 might be the way to go. So I'm going to continue to carve this down and carve this here, making a more bulbous section right here. And then that should pretty much give us the final shape of our handle. So the last thing that I want to do here is just clean up this end here, soften the edge, and then we are going to sand our entire piece. And we will start off with 80 grit and work our way all the way up to 320. And at this point, I've got something that looks like this. It feels good, it looks good. And with our brush inserted in the end, it looks to be a good length now for its intended purpose. However, I would not glue this in yet. I think what we're going to have to do at this point is apply the finish first. Because if we glue the brush in now and then apply the finish, we won't be able to completely seal up this end here. And you have to remember, this is going to be used with water to clean out brush or water bottles. So you really want this end to be sealed well. The epoxy, once we glue this in to the end hole with epoxy, that is going to seal in the hole. So you don't need to seal in here, but you definitely want to give a good sealing to this end of the brush and give your entire handle a good coating and seal that all in as well. Well, it's been a few days and the finish is done and dry on our handle. All in all, 3 coats of satin finished varnish, and it came out really nicely. Sand it with 400 wet sandpaper in between, and it really gives it a nice finish. So now it's time to put our brush back inside. Now this isn't rocket science. I've shown you this before here on the show, that if you're going to mix up some epoxy, why not use a little bit of masking tape here on your desk, and it avoids a lot of the mess. So we're just going to mix up some 2-part epoxy, and we will place a generous coat on the wire of our brush here where we took it out of the other handle, and we can glue it into the hole at the end of our new handle. Now the epoxy will go a long way to sealing that hole for when you're using it for washing the bottles and that sort of thing. So we don't have to worry too much about that, but you just want to make sure that you give it a nice generous coating of the epoxy and let it fully cure. And we'll let that completely cure, and that will be it for our bottle brush with the new longer handle. And there you have it. That didn't turn out quite like I thought it was going to. Guys, this project is not about turning a brush handle. This project is not about splitting bamboo. It is not about using 2-part epoxy to glue a piece of metal into a brush. It's not about applying finishes. It's not about sanding stock. It is not about any of that. What it's about is your skill set. You guys, every one of you out there that is watching this show, whether you believe it or not, has a skill set. You have the ability to take a raw piece of wood and turn it into something. And I don't mean turn it on the lathe. I mean convert it from its original form into something completely different and something completely useful. So in my situation here, my wife purchased a brush that she thought would work for a certain application, and it didn't. So I analyzed the problem, found out what would correct it, offered a reasonable solution, and then used my skill set to turn a piece of wood, a scrap piece of walnut, into a beautiful walnut handle for this brush, making it attractive, making it very usable, making it work exactly the way that my wife was hoping it was going to work from day one. And now it does. And you guys can do the same. And that is what this show is about. It's about seeing a problem and using your skill sets as woodworkers to overcome that problem, to switch it up, to make it so that you didn't waste your money, or that product is not used, or it's just taking up space. It makes it so that you can use it. If you don't have a lathe, let's say that you have the exact same situation and you want to make a handle. You don't have a lathe. So what? Have you got a knife? Have you got chisels? Have you got a spoke shave? Have you got a block plane? Because you could easily turn one of these by using a block plane or a spoke shave. Clamp it in, chamfer off the 45 degree or the 90 degree corner rather to a 45, and then slowly work your way around to round it. Does it have to be perfect? Absolutely not. Will you be able to make it perfect? I don't know. I don't know how far you want to take it, but will it qualify you as a woodworker, and do you have the skills as a woodworker to do what I'm explaining? 100%. 100%. And that's what today's video is about. Gaining your self-confidence in your woodworking ability, because I know you can all do something like this. It could be a handle. It could be, I don't even know. It could be making a coaster. It could be anything. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you guys look at a situation, look at a problem, you analyze it, and you have that ability with your woodworking to make it right. And that's what woodworking is all about, guys. This, as simple as it is what makes us stand out and over and above the crowd when it comes to, our skill set. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. This one has been interesting and fun. I haven't turned something on the lathe for a while, and as I said, although it's not about the turning, and that's why it's on a Tuesday episode of the show, it is about having fun in the shop. And if you can have fun and produce something that is useful as well, then that's a win-win situation. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click the bell and then you won't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. I hope you've enjoyed today's show, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope you're going to take your skill set as woodworkers and apply it to problems that you may see at your end of things. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.